Hello everybody. Today I'm going to go ahead and review the Lippert Ground Control TT auto leveling system for camper trailers that Lippert Control produces. I have a Forest River Flagstaff 25 BDRS unit that I got caught in the rain once trying to go ahead and level the thing and whatnot. It was just really kind of frustrating. Go running around each of the corners and make one level, then make another level, etc. So I decided to go ahead and spring for the big bucks for an auto leveling system. Had some good reviews on it, and eTrailer has a really good video, although they don't cover some of the things, and I'm going to just fine tune that by discussing some of the things that they don't cover in it. But it does function very well, and it works wonderfully. The only drawback I would say for me was the standpoint that I'd ordered the system, I'd unpacked it, I'd looked at most everything was there, but there's so many parts until you actually put it on, you don't really know what you're missing. And what I was missing on my particular item was the terminal resistors that are needed for one of the control panels and the main board that controls the whole system, and I didn't have those, and I had to go ahead and order them and had them come 3 or 4 days after I'd already put this whole system on before I could finish the install. I'd called customer service at Lippert and they were closed due to COVID or whatnot, and so nobody got back to me, so I ended up actually doing an additional ordering, so it cost me another $40 to go ahead and get those pieces. The best price I found on the unit was Tweedy's RV in Texas, and I think that that's a reasonable place to do it. It came fairly quickly. It did ship freight, and they had a truck with a lift gate on it, which was able to go ahead and deposit the unit, and they had a guy there with a jack maneuvering that moved the pallet to where I needed it and dropped it there. So that was very good without any, I don't believe it was any additional expense for it. But Tweedy's RV was very nice. It is a product that is made in China, but it appears that the quality control that Lippert has in China is good enough to go ahead and actually produce a very good product. Anyway, this is what the system box looks like. It's a fairly sizable box, and this is what the ground control system actually looks like installed on your trailer. And it does do the automatic leveling under 3 minutes, but I'll get into that in a minute. Let's see, there are some additional things you will need, and I'll go over that in just a few seconds. Okay, here are some additional things you're going to need. Obviously, you're going to need a drill. I bought these as 8-gauge wire terminal connectors. The wire that it powers the unit is an 8-gauge, and they talk in the eTrailer video about running it all the way to the battery for power. You don't really have to do that if you have these automatic resetting breakers in the unit, because you'll see power going to them, and if you have more than one, you'll see a jumper running from one unit to the other unit to provide power to the other breaker. And since it's not really involved with a lot of other high power items at the time that you're running the lift, you can certainly do that and run a short jumper wire like this one that's 8-gauge that jumps between the circuit breakers in order to provide power on a relatively short basis. You obviously need a nut driver set here. There are several screws and whatnot that are needed for doing stuff. You need drill bits, small drill bit to start, and then you need a larger drill bit. And my recommendation is that you buy a brand new set of drill bits for this, because drilling through that I-beam is really difficult. You need obviously wire stripper, some crimpers. This is Loctite foam for foaming the undersurface of the RV after you've placed all the wires through it. Okay, the other things you might find handy, I used, just because of the angles that I was running around things, I added some additional loom weave around some of the cables in order to reduce the issues of crimping or pinching on various metal items. I also used these screws, which I used to go ahead and attach my zip ties for holding the item to the bottom of the I-beam. Use these zip ties with the little screw holes in them, and that allowed me to go ahead and place these about once every 1.5 to 2 feet in order to go ahead and keep everything out of the way. Clamps are nice. They talk about clamping the original brace that goes on the underside of the I-beam. And that original brace that goes under the underside of the I-beam is rather heavy, and it's difficult to clamp and hold in position. What I did is I took a piece of wood, cut it out to be the identical size of the bracket that goes on the underside of the I-beam, and then drilled little tiny holes in the unit where the holes were that you would attach your screws to, just big enough to basically run a punch through. Then you can clamp those very easily to the underside of the I-beam without all this additional weight and potential shifting of weight. And then you can use a punch to go ahead and punch up through the middle of the holes in order to place your bracket screw hole locations in the appropriate fashion without having this big heavy thing hanging up there. You just have a 1/4 inch piece of plywood. The only other thing you really need is a punch device of some type. This one happens to be an automated punch, and a marker of some type. They do have those yellow markers, window markers and whatnot for marking holes, which we'll see where they mark those on the e-trailer video that I'll link below. And again, usually they do a pretty good job on the e-trailer video, but let me go show you the unit and how it functions and what I did to go ahead and modify a few things. Okay, first I'll show you the control devices. I won't go into them too much in detail. It's only that I put this one inside next to our couch. We have a Murphy bed in the front of the unit, and it basically is fairly self-explanatory on extend, retract, etc. And you can use the up and down arrows to select what jack you're actually interested in using. So you can do this all from the inside. This is the inside control panel. It's also the important control panel for the sake of after you initially install the unit, you'll get faults. And that's because they're retracted up beyond their detente and won't allow them to move because they're retracted beyond their detente. So they won't move automatically. What you have to do is manually select each jack on this control panel and extend them about 3 to 4 inches. And once you extend them about 3 to 4 inches, you just hit retract all and they will all function. But that's the inner control panel. They also have one for the outside. This is the outside control panel. Now I installed this here just because it had a lot fewer things on this side than the other side, and seems to be, you know, in a really decent position for running things. There's a little panel on the inside that screws down that blocks this off, and you just connect the wiring harnesses up and run them. And I ran them along the bottom part of this out of the way between the Murphy bed, etc., and then ran the inner control wires along the inside of this panel here in order to go ahead and keep them out of the way. And again, I use those zip ties with the screw hole tie downs in order to hold them in position. Now the actual components of the unit if you elect to do this, and I did, I had the power tongue jack as part of the Lippert control system because it all functions as one when you're going ahead and doing the install and retract, etc. This has a great feature on it. Once you pull into your campsite, or where this is right here, you can go ahead and raise the jack up to the height that it detaches from your coupler ball, and then you drive your vehicle out of the way, and then you do the auto leveling process, and then when you need to hook back up, you retract everything and then go ahead and hit this one button here called hitch height, which will go ahead and raise it up to the last hitch height that was present to make hooking up your vehicle easier. So you can do this and not even really pay attention to what's going on, other than the fact that you don't want anybody to be squished by anything. But you can do this, go about your business, getting everything ready otherwise, and the trailer will get into position for you height-wise for you to hook back up. Now, the other parts of this system are the jacks themselves, which are very beefy dudes. And then you have a bar that goes all the way across. Now, you can have issues with regards to pinching, and I basically checked the gas lines there underneath here to make sure that the pinching did not occur. There is one thing that you have to be careful of that I was not careful of, is that this drawbar here, I originally set these things a little bit more forward, the brackets originally a little more forward, not realizing how far out the jacks actually stuck out beyond the bracket. So I'd recommend that you basically move the bracket back at least 4 inches from the inner edge of the drawbar in order to give you adequate clearance for the nut. So I had to re-drill all these myself, and that's just me. And then we go to the back part of the unit where you have the same thing. And you have all these units in place. Again, the same bar that goes all the way across. And the only thing that you have to worry about on this end is how close you are to your waste valve poles to make sure you don't interfere with those. Now, when you do the jacks, it's definitely good if you have a floor jack on wheels, put it on wood or whatnot if you don't have pavement underneath your vehicle in order to raise these individual jacks up. They weigh about 75-80 pounds a piece. So you really need 2 people in order to do it, in order to put the initial initial bolts in place and nuts in place to hold them in while you get the thing settled. And then I have under here the rear control unit for leveling, and it's in the center of the vehicle. And up front I have a similar rear control unit. As you go further along the vehicle here, this is where I elected to bring everything in to the vehicle. So you'll see wires coming through here with loom on them going up into the vehicle here. And I did that because there was already a fairly sizable hole in the vehicle on this side for the water pipe from the fresh water fill for the tank up front. And so there's a large hole there, so all I had to do is open some of the webbing around that in order to put the hoses up through, and I didn't have to cut any additional opening in the floor of the unit. I could fit everything up in between there. And then you just mount the control board on the inside, and you'll see the control board size on that e-trailer video. Now you can see here the electrical harness and whatnot, and you'll see those breakers with the jumper red wires between the breakers going ahead and going to the power of the unit. And then I just ran a black wire straight into the frame of the system, or frame of the trailer, in order to go ahead and ground it. Okay, now I will go ahead and operate the system just to show you how that runs, and show you how it operates, but it functions very quickly and efficiently. So first, when you go ahead and operate this system, you initially have to press the up and down arrow and release it, and you'll see a little green light come on. That indicates that the system is up and functional. And then what you do is you want to go ahead and hit retract all. Since they're all down, I'm going to go ahead and retract them, and it will start out initially raising the back units. And once those are up, it will go ahead and put the tongue jack down. And then it will go ahead and raise the front units. And those things are all done, so now we'll go to the tongue jack and drop it down and raise it up enough to release pressure on the front of the unit. Again, the whole process takes about 3 minutes. From start to finish, for raising it up and whatnot. And then it will switch over to raise these up once that's up high enough. And one of the things that the e-trailer thing does is it basically has the connecting wire sort of hanging here underneath this mess. And I don't know why there's a hole that's built right in here that doesn't basically get any pinch. If you run a wire there and then you bring it along the inside of here, you don't get any pinching of the wire, and it keeps the wire out of the way. So I don't know why e-trailer didn't basically go into the discussion of that particular thing, but I found that is a good place to run the wire without any risk of pinching. But anyway, that's the whole process, and then you just would hit hitch height in order to raise the trailer height, hitch up to the height you need. Okay, so now again, if the green light's off, then you just push these two buttons together and let them go, and the green light will come back on. And you want to go ahead and hit auto level, and it will initially go ahead and make sure that's at the right height. Lowers it down so that the back units can go down. Actually, is it the front units first? Yes, the front units first, sorry. And it depends, I mean, it will go ahead and adjust for the softness of the terrain. If it's soft and kind of boggy, and you don't have these kind of things distributing the weight for it, it will go ahead and slowly, intermittently adjust as time goes on to go ahead and make sure that everything is level or well seated before it's finished with it. And then it'll raise up the front jack. finish adjusting those to be relatively level, and then we'll go ahead and drop the little back ones. And again, you can do this all from the inside as well as from the outside control panel. So if it happens to be inclement weather, once you chock your wheels, you can go ahead and do the auto leveling from the inside. And again, you can manually adjust side to side or each individual jack if you so desire. But it does go ahead and produce a leveling surface enough that it sort of tilts the trailer so the left rear is down a little bit more than the front of the trailer and this side of the trailer, so that the water from your air conditioner goes off the back corner. Most of the rainwater goes off the back corner if it should be raining. So it's nice from that standpoint that they actually kind of thought about pretty much everything. But it's pretty much done right now. It was just finishing its settling, so it's all finished. And that's how fast it takes. But overall, I'm very pleased with the system and how it runs. Like I said, there's a few little things that need to be assessed and addressed with regards to making sure that you have the terminal resistors for the back of your control unit so that everything can be finally installed. And those additional items that I showed earlier on are essentially all you need to really complete the unit, other than the floor jack. I did use marine wire, so it's tinned, so it's less likely to corrode in the process. And the 8-gauge terminals I got on for the wire are basically have heat shrink already on them, so you can heat shrink everything. You can also use the heat gun on the loom. Once you cut the loom to the proper size, you can use heat shrink on it to go ahead and get rid of the frayed edges of it, so you don't have to worry about the frayed edges, fraying more as you go along. But anyway, all in all, I'm very pleased with the system. Used it a couple times now, and it is just a blessing that I can go about doing other things while the system is doing what it needs to do to go ahead and level the trailer without me really paying attention, other than making sure nobody gets squished underneath. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll post some other things later. I've got some other additional items that I added to my system that I really love, but I'll talk about those later. Thank you. Oh, I forgot to mention, it probably took me about 12 hours to complete this on my own. I did have my son help me for the jacks, but otherwise it just was a long, drawn-out process. E-Trailer makes it look easy because they've got the trailer up on a jack, and they can stand under it and do everything underneath it without crawling around underneath the trailer. But you can use the cardboard box that the unit came in, take all the staples out of it, and then you can put that underneath your trailer if your trailer is on dirt, like mine is, and crawl around on the cardboard underneath it without getting too filthy. Anyway, again, thanks for listening, and I will post something else later. Thank you.